Keep track of how many of these that you or someone you know is struggling with. Food allergies, food sensitivities, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, heartburn, acne, psoriasis, eczema, painful periods, a weak immune system, depression, anxiety, joint pain, fatigue, or moodiness. I bet you have almost all of your fingers up at this point. And the crazy thing is that this list is just a small portion of the health problems that could be caused by an unhealthy gut. I know you've probably heard about the gut and the microbiome, but grasping how important it is and how to keep it healthy is extremely important for your quality of life. Heather Famularo is joining me to talk through this. She is a GAPS practitioner and holistic nutritionist. She helps people heal their gut for a living, and this episode is loaded with helpful insight. I have a gut feeling that you're going to love it. Welcome to the Daily Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Meredith. I've led my family on a transformative health journey for over a decade, and now I help other families do the same. So this is a place where you can learn about healthy living and take the next step in your wellness journey. Hey, Heather, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Melissa.
My health story, with my family, has a very close connection to gut health. So when I found you online and saw you talking about all the gut health things, I was like, I have to know more about this lady. So can you just kind of introduce yourself to the audience today?
Yeah, sure. Well, that's exciting to hear. I try to put out quality information and not just like fluffy reels that.
Yes, I love it so much.
Or something. Yeah, so I was a really sick kid growing up. I didn't know it at the time, but now looking back, I'm like, wow. I had the ear infections. I had chronic stomach problems. I remember going to a doctor, my mom taking me to the doctor at like the age of 5, and they put me on a, I forget, some sort of stomach medication. And they just said, you have to take this after every meal for the rest of your life. And my mom, she was pretty medically minded, but it didn't sit right with her, thankfully. So she tried to adapt my diet a little bit. Like, we pretty much figured out fried foods were a no-go. Who would have thought, you know?
Right.
So she adapted it a little bit, and that did help. And I would say I kind of knew what to avoid for a while, but not clearly. And then, but yeah, I had everything. Like, I had mono, we call that glandular fever here. I remember getting like the flu, strep throat, and bronchitis at the same time. And I was out for like 6 weeks, like bedbound in middle school. Like, I just had horrible, medical history growing up, tons of antibiotics. I just had everything. And then going into college, I was at a church, and like the pastor's wife was getting into health. And I remember her feeding her kids kefir and bee pollen. And I was like, what in the world? It was just so crazy. I still remember it being like, I've never even heard of these foods before.
That's awesome.
Then I got to know her and another girl, Danny, from Happy Healthy Littles, who's amazing. And they just really helped me with health a little bit, and I learned from them, and I was just like fascinated. Anyway, I learned from them a bit, got started on a health journey, did veganism, as everyone does, for a little. Didn't really work for me. And then what did we do? Danny took me to a Weston A. Price meeting, and someone was speaking about GAPS. And I immediately just knew everything they were talking about was for me. I bought the book. I literally got started within 2 days. Like, I was hardcore. And so many of my gut issues calmed down. Like, acne totally cleared up. I mean, I don't think I had a pimple for like 3 years, like,
wow,
just incredible. And I had so many other amazing effects. Like, I didn't have the fatigue, and my hormonal cramps went away, and just I had so many amazing
your stomach issues like settled down too.
100%. And the thing is, I figured out when doing GAPS, because you're removing a bit. So GAPS is Gut and Physiology Syndrome. And because you're removing so much, then I figured out, okay, if I were to eat something, I've basically figured out I was allergic to, or my stomach couldn't handle canola oil, sunflower oil, any of those seed oils are known as like seed oils now, but I just called them vegetable oils. And I just realized that's what I can't handle. So it also gave me just like a very clear understanding of this is real food and this is not, because my body would tell me immediately. And it was so cool. And now, 15 years later, everyone's all about like, avoid seed oils. And I'm like, my body knew that 15 years ago. It was like, no way. So yeah. And then I became a GAPS practitioner, a nutritionist, met my husband who suffered from migraines every day. He had a migraine almost every day for 15 years. And I knew it was gut related. So he eventually did GAPS and his migraines went away. And yeah, so now I specialize in GAPS as a GAPS practitioner, helping people heal their gut.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot. I'm just like, as you're talking, I'm like, people are like flashing through my mind, like, oh, I know someone with migraines. Oh, I know someone with, stomach issues. Oh, I know someone with painful periods. I'm just like, there's so many people struggling with those issues that you had.
Yes, absolutely.
So I guess we kind of are touching on this by you telling us your symptoms, but because of your symptoms and then what you learned with GAPS, the Gut and Physiology Syndrome, is that right?
Yeah.
And how does that, like, I guess, how do you know who has gut problems? If someone comes to you and they are having some kind of health problem, how can you know that that's related to their gut? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, after working with so many people and seeing so many crazy things go away, things that I've never even heard of before, I kind of have the mentality that everything stems from the gut, because it is our control center and it makes our hormones, our neurotransmitters, our enzymes, like everything. But some of the main things I would say are people who have food allergies or food sensitivities. They have to be gluten-free, they have to be dairy-free, they have to be, they have all these restrictions. Acne, let's see what else. Just anything that hurts your stomach, basically. Bloating, reflux, diarrhea. That's all quite obvious. But then a lot of mental health things as well. Pretty much everyone that I work with has some form of anxiety or depression. And it's not shocking, because our main anti-anxiety hormone, GABA, or neurotransmitter, is made in our gut. Our main happy, feel-good neurotransmitter, serotonin, is made almost 100% in the gut. So if we have an imbalanced gut, or it's inflamed, or it's not nourished, basically that's like what's going on when we have an imbalanced gut. Our body is just prioritizing survival. It's not prioritizing making you feel good, happy neurotransmitters. And so, yeah, that's just a huge one that I'm seeing. And when we restore that, the gut starts making its own serotonin again, its own GABA, its own dopamine, and then people just start feeling really good. And obviously there are other things with anxiety. It's not just a food issue, but I think that is at least a third of the component that people might be missing.
Yeah, I think so too. So you mentioned having an imbalanced gut. Do you think that's the same thing as having a leaky gut, or different?
Yeah, usually, because it usually all goes together. Because if you have a leaky gut, you're going to have an overgrowth of parasites and yeast and all that. And then if you have that, it'll kind of cause leaky gut. So it's kind of like a chicken and the egg thing, but definitely.
Okay. And so what do you think gets people to that place? Like, if so many people are struggling and it's all pretty much gut related, why do so many people have gut issues to begin with?
Yeah. Well, I always like to tell people not to fully take the blame off people, but our society does not set us up for good health. So a lot of people can go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was doing this. I'm such a bad person. I took birth control for 15 years or whatever. That's bad. So I'll just list a few things, but just to know, it's not all stuff we can control, which sucks,
I mean, yeah, you just said birth control, and people are going to be like, wait, what?
Yeah, birth control acts as a
like, oh my gut, what? Yeah.
Yeah. Birth control acts as an antibiotic in your gut. It destroys your gut lining. So that's a huge one. And we're all prescribed it. I was on it. Pretty much everyone I know has been on it at some point. Antibiotics, they give you antibiotics for everything, things that aren't even bacteria related. I've heard of people getting antibiotics for yeast overgrowth, which it doesn't affect yeast. Tons of
viral ear infections. Yeah.
Yes. Viruses.
Yeah.
So antibiotics is huge. Birth control is big. Another thing that's really hard to avoid is glyphosate is the chemical in Roundup, that weed killer that's associated with like genetically modified foods and all that. And it is sprayed on everything. Unfortunately, it's sprayed on our lawns, it's sprayed like on our food, and that acts as an antibiotic. So it's really important to eat organic as much as you can. But yeah, it's like, people in Australia, a lot of people have like a tank filter where they get rainwater and all that. Or they filter water from the ground, which you'd think is a really healthy source. But unless it's filtered, you're also getting probably a ton of that Roundup in your water from just like, and you can have a super healthy yard and your neighbor's spraying it on theirs and you're getting affected by it. So those are a few of the things. And then obviously like eating a really refined diet. When we eat a lot of processed sugar and processed foods, those feed the overgrowth of yeast in our gut. And I'm probably missing some things, but another one, chlorine in the water. They put chlorine and fluoride in the water everywhere to like protect our health. But it also destroys our gut bacteria. And then finally, not eating the traditional foods that our ancestors grew up on. They say like, what is it? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure or something like that. I really believe that with fermented foods, which I think we'll get into in a little bit. Yeah, the fermented foods are so essential at protecting and rebuilding your gut so that you can come in contact with things and not totally break down. If I go to a restaurant and they serve me a drink that's made from tap water that has chlorine in it, I'm not going to have a mental breakdown because I do all this stuff daily to keep my gut in a healthy state. Yeah.
Yeah. What about environmental factors like cleaning products or personal care products? Does that have a big impact?
Yeah. That's something I've actually delved too much into. I know they definitely can affect your gut, and I try to stay away from all the toxins. But I haven't looked in directly how they relate to your gut. So that would be interesting.
Yeah, just curious. And I was thinking about like, some cleaning products are marketed as like antibacterial and things like that. And I'm sure that plays a role in things.
That's true. That's a good point. I never thought. I mean, I always tell people to clean up their stuff, but I didn't think about that.
Yeah. And maybe stress.
Yeah.
Like the lifestyle that you live in general, you get, depletes your minerals and things like that.
Yes. Yeah, huge. It depletes your minerals. It depletes the bifidobacterium, which is our main probiotic in our bowel lining. We get that a lot in like yogurt or fermented dairy or probiotic pills that you might take. So yeah, that's a good point. Stress.
I know everybody listening is stressed. So
yeah, I know. That's one thing I need to get better at. It's hard.
Yeah, I know. It is hard as a mom and, business owner and all the things.
Totally.
It is hard. And now we're recording this around the holidays. So it's like even more important to talk about, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if you were working with someone and you knew that they needed to address their gut health, what kind of pep talk would you give them to really help them to understand how important their gut health is?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably just try to connect all the dots between here are all your issues. They all look different. This is how they all relate to the gut. And I would probably encourage them, like, I've seen so many people get rid of this issue, like the anxiety and the depression and stuff. The amount of people who are like, oh, I haven't had seasonal depression this year. This is the first year I haven't had that. I see it all the time. It's pretty routine. So that, but also I often tell people that, at first it can feel scary to change some big things like, oh, I've never had this food, or this is weird, or oh, I have to do this for life. But it becomes routine and you start to enjoy them. Like, things like kimchi maybe, or sauerkraut. I used to hate that. I'm German. I would grow up going to German festivals and I would literally cry and plug my nose and be like, I will never eat that. And now I make it my own and I eat it every day. So
and you're making reels about it.
Well, yeah, I'm like full circle for me. So yeah, I think people, once they get into health, it becomes a passion, and that's what's exciting.
Well, just hearing your story at the very beginning, I'm like, oh my goodness, if my friends who are struggling with painful periods or migraines or acne or chronic bowel issues, I was like, oh, if they could hear that there is someone who has like experienced what you're experiencing and now they're not. Like, those stories are really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. And there's some really good stories online. I mean, I have a YouTube channel and I've interviewed a few people who have done the GAPS diet, and they're like crazy cases. Like one girl, her son was diagnosed with autism. It was extremely severe, nonverbal. He would, hit and attack himself like many, many times a day. Another girl had Lyme, chronic fatigue, just about everything, fibromyalgia. And then another was head to toe eczema for a child. I mean, he was wrapped up like a mummy, full bandages. And these people share their stories of healing the gut, and they're all so different. And the amount of crazy progress, like that head to toe eczema, fully healed with GAPS. I mean, incredible. Going from chlorine baths, steroid, all that stuff to healing the gut. The child with autism, he now is like a musician in school, fully capable. You wouldn't even think he was on the spectrum. I mean, a beautiful young boy. And then the other girl who had all that chronic fatigue and all those the symptoms that you can't really see, they're underneath. She's had like a full recovery, and they're all so different, but so cool. So yeah, I could just get excited about all that.
It's so motivating too. I mean, I know in my own health journey, when I start making those changes and start feeling better, it's so motivating to feel better, because feeling bad sucks, to be honest. Like, you go through a season of like not being able to sleep, or, having debilitating anxiety, or whatever it is, allergies, you name it. Mm-hmm. It's so exhausting to feel bad all the time. And the stress of kind of not knowing what it is or why it's not getting better, or, you know what I mean? It's just like mentally exhausting as well as physically exhausting.
Yeah. And whenever we get sick, my husband and I, we spend more than most people on, we don't spend that much on food, but a lot of time and effort and sourcing and going to the farmer's market and all that. And sometimes you can feel like, oh man, we put a lot into this. And then we get sick with something and we're reminded, oh, it is so worth it to not be sick all the time. We get sick maybe a couple times a year and we recover pretty quickly. And we just go, oh, okay, this is worth it. Just like you're saying.
It's like a little memory of like, oh, I used to feel like this all the time. And then I'm like, this is why I do it. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I can totally relate. And some of you listening might even just be like, I don't know, I hope some of the dots are connecting for people, because I know for me, when I first started eating real whole foods, like I had all these digestion issues kind of resolve themselves. And I didn't even really know that I had digestion issues. I was so used to it. You know what I mean? I was just it was normal to feel bloated or constipated or whatever. I just thought that was my normal. I didn't know I could feel better. And so you started eating better. I'm like, wow, this is how I'm supposed to feel.
I know. And our bodies are like, thank you. You're giving me something I can actually digest.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Hey, Daily Wellness listeners. Have you ever wished for specific guided help with your health journey? Maybe you need someone to teach you about menu planning or how to get your whole family on board with healthy eating. Maybe you need recommendations for non-toxic cleaning and personal care products so that you can finally make the switch. Now, you and I can chat one-on-one about whatever health topic you'd like. For more details and to schedule, go to dailywellnesscommunity.com/coaching. Now back to the episode. Okay, so what goes into healing the gut? Maybe you can kind of walk us through some more details about GAPS or what you like to talk through with your clients.
Yeah, so what goes into healing the gut generally is rebuilding the gut lining. So our gut lining from our nose, ear, throat, all the way down to our bum, it's like a big tube with a mucosal lining. And that has lots of little villi on it that, they create enzymes and break down our food and just move things through. They create enzymes, they create nutrition. This is so cool. We think we get nutrition from food, which we do, but a lot of the food actually feeds the microbes, and then the microbes start releasing that nutrition. So when we don't have a lot of these traditional foods, let's say you grew up like I did and you have like Pop-Tarts and all that stuff.
Yes.
We're not eating foods that really support the rebuilding of our gut lining. And our body needs to be rebuilt. That's the point of food. We eat nutrition and it goes, oh, okay, I can take that and I'll put it in my joints and my teeth and my bones to rebuild. And when we're not doing that, it just starts breaking down slowly. So, a lot of us, some people are vegans, but a lot of us eat meat. And we usually, America in the West and Australia, we stick to just eating the muscle meats like steak, chicken, I don't know, maybe a sausage or mince is what we call it here, ground beef. And it's just the muscle meat. And so that repairs our muscles and stuff like that. But we're not actually getting a lot of the stuff that repairs the gut lining. So our gut lining needs connective tissue. And that's what we get in kind of like bone broths, but short cooked. We prefer to call them meat stock. So with the GAPS diet, bone broths are like cooked for 24, 48 hours. But on GAPS, you kind of do a similar thing. It's a meat stock. So it's like a bone with connective tissue around it. So a chicken frame or also buco, just something where it's bone, connective tissue, and meat around it. Oxtail, that kind of thing. We only cook it for about 2 hours, and that creates a meat stock. And if you were to, it's like a soup. So you put it in water, let it cook, take out the meat and the bones, and then you almost have like a broth. That, when you put it in the fridge, will be really gelatinous. And that gelatin is showing that there's chondroitin, there's glycine, there's all these beautiful amino acids that rebuild the gut. So that was kind of a long answer, but basically the number one thing is giving your body what it needs to rebuild the gut lining, because it's not made of the proteins that we get from steak and chicken, and that it's made from the proteins in the connective tissue. So that's like, you get that from like chicken feet or pig's feet or all these things that a lot of other countries use, and they make broths like the Chinese, or, they make all these broths and they eat them, and that's just part of their health, where we don't do that. And so meat stock's my number one. I always say start slow, but learn how to make a meat stock. Get that into your family. You can use it as a base for soups. You can drink it like a mug. It tastes really nice. So yeah, that's number one. And then after that is probiotics. So I am 100% more in favor of probiotic foods than I am in supplements. If people had any idea how many more probiotics are in the foods, they probably wouldn't buy supplements unless they really, really need them. So, a probiotic bottle will be like, this contains 1 billion CFUs, basically probiotics, where, in a fermented food, you might get 1 billion in 1/8 of a teaspoon of that fermented food. So these things are so much more powerful. Like, if you could take 1/4 of a teaspoon of this versus spending $100 on a probiotic pill thing, you would definitely do the food. So I would say those are the two things that are the most important, is getting that meat stock in, those amino acids, basically the proteins that rebuild the gut lining, and then getting in some of those probiotics from fermented foods, but going really slow, because, this is a whole nother segue, but they can cause die-off, which is like, they go in, they kill off yeast, and then it can make you feel kind of funky, kind of like a detox reaction.
Okay. This is kind of encouraging, because both of the things you mentioned can be done pretty inexpensively, like making the meat stock. You can buy chicken feet and those chicken, beef bones and things like that pretty inexpensively to make meat stock. And it is really easy. This will be released in the winter, especially for us right now, to like work that into all the warming foods that you're making already during this season.
Yeah. And it's so much better than anything store-bought. There's a lot of brands that people promote, and I'm not going to say them, but they'll be like, this is such a great bone broth. And then I went back to America this year and I tried it, and I'm like, this is just literally liquid. Like, there's no gel in it. It's just on like the shelf. It's, I don't know, $15. And it's just, there's nothing in it. You don't want this. You want the homemade stuff. And it's actually, like you said, it's affordable. It's easy. You can make a huge amount and freeze it, and then just add some of that to each soup you make. There's so much you can do. So cheap and so good.
Yeah. So question about probiotics. Like, I know in the biotics world, there's like prebiotics and postbiotics and all the things. Like, so are all of those important? Are they all in fermented foods? Do we even need to worry about that? Like, help me understand the different types there.
It can be slightly different for different people who have different issues. If someone has small intestinal bacteria overgrowth or something, with like the prebiotics, you might just want to be a bit slower, or take them out entirely. A lot of people have to do carnivore, so they're not having like any fiber or anything. It's definitely a case-by-case basis, but I would say if your digestion isn't too bad, just start including probiotics in small amounts. And then like the prebiotics are often found in just fiber from other foods. I don't think you really need to be too specific about that. I don't worry too much about prebiotics because, well, this is what Dr. Natasha McBride says. If you have an overgrowth of bad bacteria, those prebiotics can be feeding the bad bacteria. Because prebiotics basically feed the bacteria in your gut. So
we're bacteria. Good. You're bad.
yeah, exactly. Where probiotics actually go in and they change things up. They actually, repopulate your gut with, they are good bacteria. So generally, I think that's a bit safer to do.
Okay. What would you say is a small amount if someone were starting?
It depends how sick you are. Some clients, it's like 1 drop of sauerkraut juice or 1 drop of whey from homemade yogurt. Other people can get away with like a teaspoon and start from there. But I definitely say start small because you don't want to have that reaction. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that is very small. I'm glad I asked that.
And I actually love that because I find people are like, oh, my kids will never eat that. When you have homemade sauerkraut or even some of the store-bought ones from the health food store or whatever that are, they're not pasteurized, they're actually a good product. You can take a drop of that and put it on their food, just a couple drops of the juice, and they'll have no idea. Put it on their meat. Okay, I'm not saying you should definitely do this, but like you can buy salad dressings, you can buy your crappy salad dressing, you can buy Heinz ketchup, okay? We don't have to be perfect in everything. And you can literally put like a tablespoon in the Heinz ketchup and shake it up. And now your kids are getting probiotics. So maybe that's not the healthiest thing to do, but
there are ways to do it.
Yes. And you don't need to be taking massive amounts. I hide it in my kids' foods all the time.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah. So I think that is a big hurdle for people when thinking about like healing naturally, that they're going to have to make some huge diet change and they're going to have to spend all this money on supplements. It's a little overwhelming.
Yeah. And it's frustrating to me as well. There are a few supplements I love. I probably have a handful of 10 that I would usually pick 1 or 2 for each people. Like, yeah, maybe 3. So much on the internet, we have to remember, is people selling you things. They're making a profit. They're making a cut. Your influencers are making, 25% on what they sell or getting paid to do it. And maybe those products can help you like 1%, but the amount of people who have said, I'm just going to be real, like so many people have told me, hey, I've been doing this and this chondroitin and this glucosamine supplement and this and that. Are these good? And I'm like, just try meat stock. And then they come back 2 weeks later. They're like, oh my gosh, this stuff, I can actually feel a difference. And it's like, yeah, because it's the real thing. It's not this super altered, dry, dehydrated, ground up thing that our body no longer recognizes. So I'm not saying there's no room for supplements, but I think a lot of the research isn't really it's either paid for or
right.
It's just not there. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think you talked about earlier, just like going back to those ancestral foods is really the way to go. And speaking of that, I was thinking, so I have a couple of people in mind that, are having these health issues and they've made a little bit of diet changes, like, maybe tried to cut out wheat or like maybe cut out 1 or 2 things. They've cut out wheat or they've cut out seed oils or they've cut out maybe sugar, something like that, white sugar. But they're not really seeing a lot of progress. So what would you say about that? Like, do we need to change more than just one thing?
Yeah, well, there's a great acronym. Oh, it's not an acronym. It's just ours. It's like, I clearly don't use it, but it's like remove. So that's the first step. So I would say they're doing a really good job. So it's remove, and then it's like re-add and rebuild. There's all these R's, but basically you've done a great job taking the things out. Now we just need to add some things in to repopulate the gut, and that would be the probiotics. So yeah, that's a great first step, but just adding in some of those other things like the meat stock is what we really need to be rebuilding it. Because if we're just removing things and we're not really like replenishing the gut, we're not strengthening it to be able to handle foods.
True. How do you know if you shouldn't eat certain things? Like, how do you know what not to eat? Like you said at one point that you knew that your body couldn't handle seed oils. Like, how are people supposed to know like what they should and shouldn't eat?
Time. I think the GAPS book is really great. I wish I had it with me, but it's a blue book by Dr. Natasha McBride, Gut and Physiology Syndrome. And she goes through a lot of the foods in there, but that's a really good question. For me personally, I can tell you when I have refined sugar, I get achy. I just notice it now. My joints get achy. Yeah, like if I were to just have a piece of cheesecake or something, the next morning I feel tired, I feel achy, and I don't normally feel like that. If I have pasteurized dairy, if I were to just go out and get like some big glass of pasteurized milk, my skin breaks out almost like that. And then the seed oils, they just make my stomach hurt. And then, I mean, anything processed is going to have less nutrition in it, but those are like the clear ones for me. You just get a symptom that's random, and that's your body going, I can't process it. But fun thing I want to say, one of the reasons pasteurized dairy is so hard for people is because we've burned off all the enzymes that we need in the dairy to break it down. So raw dairy has lactase to help you break it down. It's basically a built-in enzyme, a built-in digestive aid to help you break it down, right? If I'm drinking raw, not even raw, if I make milk kefir, which is kind of like a yogurt, I have a course that teaches you how to make it, but it's really easy. If I'm making that regularly and making smoothies with that and having that with my kids kind of daily, I can handle pasteurized milk now totally fine. Because milk kefir has so much of those enzymes in it. It just creates a ton of the enzymes to break down milk. So I know that's kind of random and a side note, but I would just always find that funny. Like if I'm having that milk kefir, which is filled with probiotics and enzymes, I can have these foods that are maybe processed or bad that I couldn't.
That's very interesting. So does the diet kind of recommend that people kind of start with an elimination type diet? And then add things back in so that they recognize symptoms when they come.
Yeah. So it's about a 2-year protocol, and there's the full GAPS diet, which includes everything. And then there's also the intro diet, which a lot of people don't do. If you had like chronic diarrhea or really bad issues, or you're just like, no, I got to do the intense thing, you would do the intro diet. So that has 6 stages, and that's kind of like an elimination diet. You remove all those processed foods, you do a lot of meat stock and slowly start adding in some of those veggies and egg yolks and stuff as you go on. You go through it slowly. It often takes at least a month to, some people stay on it for a year, but I don't really recommend that. But yeah, that's kind of like the elimination thing. And then when you add them in, you can see if you really react to them. But usually when you're doing the elimination diet, because you're adding in all that meat stock and because you're adding in all those fermented foods, which are rebuilding your gut, often you don't have problems like you used to. So people will be like, there's no way I can eat plants. And then they start doing GAPS, and then they start introducing zucchini. Oh, I'm okay. Oh, broccoli. And yeah, it's really cool. And that's just showing the rebuilding of that.
And I see you talk about histamine stuff a lot. And you mentioned it once, like what is the connection here with gut health?
Yeah, so this is something I'm passionate about, and I work almost exclusively with people who have histamine intolerance or mast cell activation syndrome. And that is basically the symptoms look like you react to everything or you're allergic to everything. I've worked with people who they react to having a shower or sitting on a couch made of fabric or wearing clothing. Like it's so severe. And it's 100% a gut issue. I feel kind of alone saying that. A lot of people that are a lot smarter than I am and our doctors disagree, but I've just seen healing the gut, reverse it so many times over and over and over and over again that I have to stick by it. And the science makes sense. Sorry. So basically we have that tube, ear, nose, throat, all the way down to our bum with the mucosal lining. And that is supposed to make DAO, which is an enzyme that breaks down histamine. So like if you get stung by a bee or you eat something that's bad or you have some sort of reaction, your body makes DAO so that it basically can like calm it down and get it out of your system. People with imbalanced guts don't have a healthy tube, digestive tract. They're not making enough DAO. So they just start reacting to everything. Their body is releasing histamine because it's sensing that there's an allergic reaction. So I'm actually going to back up. Before we get to the DAO, with that gut lining, when it's leaky, leaky gut or inflamed, whatever they're eating is going to be leaking. The tube should be like this. It should be closed. When we have leaky gut, it gets like this. So now You could have the healthiest kale salad or whatever from Whole Foods with organic olive oil. It's still going to be leaking in there. So it's not even really about the food. It's about the state of your digestive tract. And when that is leaky, your body just starts reacting to everything. It sees everything as a threat because everything's going where it shouldn't. It's leaking out of that tube. And then your body starts releasing histamine. So it's a whole big thing, but it is 100% a gut issue. And so when we heal the gut with GAPS and we do the meat stalk, we seal the lining, our body stops overreacting. It doesn't start sending histamine every time you come in contact with anything. And it starts creating DAO on its own. So now when it does release histamine, or you eat a food high in histamine, your body breaks it down with that DAO. And it's just so cool to see because so many people have been eating a low histamine diet for years and they're down to just chicken and rice.
Right.
And they're like, no way anything could help me. And they start doing meat stalk slowly and they start seeing results. It's just so cool.
Yeah. So could this work for any age of person?
Yeah, I specialize mostly with adults. There are a lot of GAPS practitioners who specialize in children. So if you're like, oh, GAPS sounds like it's for me, I would look around. There's a GAPS website where you can find a practitioner either in your area or abroad who specializes in what you want. But it definitely works for children incredibly. My kids haven't done GAPS, but I incorporate a lot of the principles like the meat stalk and the probiotics. And we haven't had any need for antibiotics. We haven't had any trips to the doctor or the hospital. I'm not saying that will never happen, but the principles are amazing for building healthy, strong kids.
Yeah, I think in today's society, if you can make it through those early years with kids and not have a bunch of trips to the hospital, that's something to talk about.
Seriously. Yeah.
Yeah. That's hard and scary as a mom, when your kids are sick so much or having allergic reactions to things, and you don't know what to do to help them.
So scary. Yeah.
So when thinking about this allergy topic with histamines, this could be applicable to really any kind of allergy.
Yeah, definitely. When you have the anaphylactic allergies like the peanuts or the soy or something like that, those can heal. They take a lot longer, and it's not something where we're like, okay, 2 weeks later, let's try it. So we're not doing that, but they definitely can. But those tend to be more of the later things to heal, like in the long term. And then once you've done GAPS and you've healed a lot and you're not reacting to everything anymore, then there's some specific tools that you can use. Some people use like homeopathy, or there's just methods that you can do at home to very, very slowly increase and get the body used to that food before they actually eat it. So there usually are some tools that you would want to do, but those can be reversed too. Yeah.
Does this play into like environmental allergies and things as well?
100%. I think if people have, if they're allergic to the mold, the dust, all the animals, all that, that's a huge sign that there's gut permeability because their body's releasing histamine, and that means their body's not creating enough DAO to break it down. So a cool thing to try at least, if you think, oh, maybe I have histamine intolerance or something. Beef kidneys are like a little pill that you can get, and you can try taking those before a meal. First of all, I would say try doing a low histamine diet, seeing if that makes a bit of a difference. It's a Band-Aid, but it will help you to figure that out. But then those beef kidney pills are really high in DAO and a lot of other nutrition, B vitamins, iron, all that. So if you take those before meals, it can really help to like calm down any histamine issues as well.
Oh, that's a great tip. Yeah, sometimes you're just going through that process of elimination. You're like, I don't know what to try. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. GAPS is for those people 100%.
Yeah. So first steps for people who are feeling nervous or kind of unsure about first steps to take if they're listening thinking, oh my goodness, I do think this is me. I think that I need to do some work healing my gut. What would you recommend as first steps?
Yeah. Meat stalk, 100%. This is what I always recommend. It's so easy to make. I have a whole course on how to make it, and it's like, I don't know, $30 or something like that. And it's seriously so easy. Like you said, chicken feet, chicken carcasses, bring it to a boil, let it simmer for a few hours, freeze a bunch of it, And then just start with like an ice cube amount and work your way up. You don't need to do any of the probiotics or anything. Just slowly start working your way up. Now, meat stock, people think, oh, it's a building food, which it is, but it's also really detoxifying. It kills parasites. It kills overgrowth of yeast like Candida. So that's why we say start really small. But as much as I love GAPS, and I'll talk about GAPS all the time, I'm not going to lie, I see people get results just from including meat stock. They'll start getting better. So if you feel like there's no way I could do GAPS, just start with that. And then start with tiny amounts of probiotic foods and just see where you are 6 months from now. It could be, 50% improvement.
Yeah. What are all the probiotic foods that you guys eat as a family?
I go through phases, to be honest. We love kimchi, which is like the Korean condiment that everyone makes in Korea, apparently. It's cabbage and peppers and radish and garlic and onions. And it's fermented, which sounds so crazy. But when it's fermented, all the spices and everything mellow out. And it's so good for your immune system and just delicious. So we love that. Sauerkraut. See, I love these two because I'm a busy mom too. I don't want to be making something every day or every week if I don't have to be doing it. No way. So I love these because I could get like 2 heads of cabbage. I could make 8 jars of sauerkraut one evening when the kids go to bed. And now I have, months of sauerkraut. It'll last in the fridge indefinitely after it's fermented. Yeah. So good. So that, and then the other main one we do is we buy kombucha because I just can't nail the recipe. And yeah, I get disappointed every time. Milk kefir is the other one, almost daily. And that one's so easy to make. So I love sauerkraut and I love all these other foods, but usually they only have a few strains of probiotics. So that means like different probiotic kind of families. A healthy gut is a diverse gut, just like a healthy ocean has every animal, plankton, whale, whatever you want. That's what we want our gut to be like. And so I love the sauerkraut and all that. We have it daily, but I wouldn't just stick to that. This is where I like the kefir. The milk kefir, where those have like 2 or 3 strains or something, milk kefir has like 60 to 70. So it is densely populated with so many beneficial probiotics. It's insane. Like you have to start so ridiculously slow, but basically every day me and my kids have a kefir smoothie where I'll just put like frozen berries, a banana, milk kefir, some nut butter or something, avocado, and they love it. I love it. And I'm just so happy that we're getting.
You make it with raw milk?
I do because it's easy to access where I am, but I've also made it with pasteurized milk and I get great benefits from that too.
Okay. And how much would you recommend starting with a small amount of kefir?
It depends how sick you are. If you're chronically sick, I would start with a drop. If you're in pretty good health, you could start with maybe like a teaspoon, but just be aware you might notice those die-off reactions, which is kind of a whole nother subject. But if you feel funky or depressed or anxious or any of your current symptoms get way worse, that's a sign that you've had too much and you need to bring it back down. Yeah, it's so powerful. Like having a teaspoon of kefir is like having an entire bottle of probiotic supplements. I mean, it's so powerful.
Yes. Yeah. I'm just thinking we're a family of 6 and this is going to be so much cheaper than buying probiotics all the time for 6 people.
Have you made milk kefir?
I haven't made kefir. No, I haven't. So I'm excited to try it. We did
so easy
for quite a while, and I've bought different sauerkrauts and things like that, which I told you before we started recording that I am going to start making sauerkraut as well because I think our family will really like that. So I need to. I just feel like this is motivating me. I need to do.
I have convinced all my friends. Like they'll call me and be like, we have this. We've been sick. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you need to make milk kefir. And I have had so many friends who have had they've had a month of sickness. You know how it just goes from one kid to the next and you're just battling it as a family. And then 6 months later, they're like, we haven't had any sickness at all. Now, I'm not saying you're never going to get sick again, right? It just shows when they started adding in that milk kefir, how much it benefited their immune systems. And it's like they got resilient and now they can fight things where they might have just been a bit weaker before. So cool.
Yeah, this is great. We are probably that weird family that you talked about. We talked about this before the recording as well, where you've talked about it in the recording where you had people that started to tell you about different things and you were like, I've never heard of these foods.
Yeah.
We're those people.
No. Oh, no. Did I say that? Oh, they're like the bee pollen and the kefir.
Yes.
Oh, totally. This was in like 2009. I'm like, what in the world? Yeah, that's awesome. That's so good because I'm sure you inspire a lot of people. And, sometimes they don't tell you, but it'll be like randomly years later, people will be like, yeah, I remember that one time you told me this. And just so you know, I've been doing it for the past 5 years and it really works. And I'm like, oh, cool. I didn't even know you were paying attention. So yeah, just living that healthy life it's inspiring to people and it makes an impact.
Yeah. I have 3 questions that I'd like to ask before we end, but is there anything else like gut health related that's on your heart that you really want to share? We cover a lot.
Yes. So for those people who haven't had kids or you still want to have kids, it is, so worth it to heal your gut before getting pregnant. If you don't heal your gut and you get pregnant and you have babies, the babies are going to have generally a lot harder time digesting your milk, breaking down foods because they inherit their gut health from your gut. When they're born, through breastfeeding, through moving through the vaginal tract, through all of those things, skin on skin contact, they're developing your microbiome. So if you can put in the work before getting pregnant, and you don't have to do these drastic things, just starting with the me stock, maybe you read the GAPS book, maybe you incorporate some of the principles or take a year off birth control before getting pregnant and avoid antibiotics. It doesn't have to be crazy stuff. It's going to be so much easier. I don't specialize in this, but I'm working more and more with moms who have children with FPIEs or something, or they have colic. They're spitting up everything. They're not digesting mom's milk. And it's so stressful for them to be in that position. So if you can work on your gut health before you have kids, it will save you so much. I thank God every day that I met Danny and Holly back in college and that I learned to do this because it's just been so invaluable. I have my own struggles, so life's definitely not perfect, but I am just grateful that I learned this back then.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I can give a testimony to that. So, I didn't know anything really about health and wellness or probiotics or gut health or anything when my first was born. And then when my last was born, it was kind of like after we had been on our health journey for a while and eating real foods. And I was in a much better place myself. And our youngest has been much healthier as a young child than our oldest was. And so I can see the difference very drastically.
So cool. I love it.
All right. Well, my 3 questions are, the first one is, what do you recommend as a healthy living resource for people that want to learn more?
Well, I love my Instagram. I'm grounded potato on Instagram. Yeah. I try really hard. Like my thought is I never want to put out content that's just basic and boring. I'm always thinking I want to create value. What are things I would want to know? And so I'm not the best at making reels and all that kind of stuff, but I really try to put out information that can help people, save you money, and is really worth it. Like I don't put out stuff that's not worth it. So I would say that. I think the GAPS book by Dr. Natasha McBride, the Blue GAPS book, Gut and Physiology Syndrome, is an incredible resource because she goes through the gut and she connects it to every area in your body and your mind and everything. And I feel like if you can read that, you'll just understand health. It changes your paradigm. It's that good. And it's intense. You might only want to read a couple pages a day, but it makes sense. And it just shifts our paradigm from the whole Western, oh, we got to fight this virus. We got to fight this infection. We got to fight this parasite. Even in the health world, we're like that. Get rid of that parasite. Get rid of this. And it just kind of goes, okay, what are they doing in the body? What's the body trying to say? And, she even talks about parasites and stuff like that and how often they're cleaning up toxic metals that we come into contact with. They're protecting the body from things. So that paradigm shift has been so incredible for me in my health journey. And I would definitely recommend that book.
Okay, I'm going to link all of that in the show notes. And I'm also going to link your courses that you mentioned.
Cool, thank you.
Because I think people are really going to be interested in that. Do you have speaking of resources for making kefir, do you have a place where you would recommend getting like those starter materials that you need?
Yeah, so in America, there's a new company. I've heard really good things about it. I haven't used them, but Yemoos, Yemoos. I've heard that their milk kefir grains are like the best from people who have been making milk kefir I don't know why, but they grow and they're really resilient. I'm pretty sure they have a lot of fermenting equipment as well. If not, Cultures for Health also has a lot of fermenting equipment. They have like those fermentation weights and everything I recommend in my course. So that's a good resource too. And then of course, Amazon. Oh my gosh, Amazon has everything these days.
Yes, for sure. Okay, I didn't even think about looking at Amazon for your grains.
I don't also
I might be a little like worried about Amazon.
I don't know. Yeah. Or the cool thing about kefir grains is once you get them, they grow and grow and grow. So you can give some to your friend, give them away. You can dehydrate some of them. You can put some in the freezer so that if you kill them, which I've totally never done, you have backups. And yeah.
Good to know. Yeah. What's your favorite healthy snack?
Oh, man. Okay. Well, like unhealthy, kind of healthy is dark chocolate. There's a brand, Alter Eco, that I love that has brown butter. And it's like my little unhealthy kind of vice. Oh,
I'll eat that with you.
Yeah, gotta be real sometimes. Like I'm not perfect. I do love a bit of chocolate. But the other one I would say is the kefir smoothies. Me and my kids just love them. Mm-hmm. You know, you're getting so many good probiotics, getting fresh fruit, and then you can add good fats. Yeah, love those.
Yeah. And then who would you love to see as a guest on the Daily Wellness Podcast?
I would love my friend Danny to be on here because Danny is one of the girls that I met in college. She runs Happy Healthy Littles. She's incredible. She has 10 years of experience, 10 years like in clinical practice with Santa Barbara's top pediatrician. She's amazing. And how I was kind of talking about preventative, like before you get pregnant, healing your gut, Danny's amazing at that kind of stuff. She works exclusively almost with the whole perinatal years. So before you get pregnant, prenatal, postpartum, and like babies and toddlers. And she's just a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. And she kind of does like before pregnancy. I kind of do more the adult stuff, like more like the chronic sickness. But it just blends so good together. And she's an amazing wealth of knowledge. And she just has so much amazing stuff to say. Love Danny.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely connect with her and check that out. Thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah.
Thank you for what you're doing. I really have learned a lot from watching your Instagram. So you're
cool.
You are providing a lot of value, and sharing your wisdom is just very generous of you. So thanks for what you're doing and how you're helping people.
Oh, thanks for saying that. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to today's episode on the Daily Wellness Podcast. We hope that you found it helpful for your own wellness journey. And if so, we'd love for you to leave a review. Then come back and listen for review shoutouts on upcoming episodes. For more information, check out the show notes and connect with us on our website, dailywellnesscommunity.com.